Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Phillips Russo, the Viticulture Extension Specialist with the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program. Today is August 19th, 2020, and this is our weekly podcast. We are here today with Kevin Martin to discuss the prices that were just published.
All right. So good news for the most part. August 19th, we know a lot of the major processors have announced prices. Prices for our major commodities, Concord and Niagara, are up. Those prices are up between probably $20 on average, but we've seen some significant movements from some of the processors. We're going to get some cash market prices above $300. Nice. And some of the processors that were a bit low last year have come up. So, everybody's going to be above 250. So mostly good news.
So today's a feel-good podcast. That sounds like good news to me. Let me ask you a quick question about that, because I know that we've had some frost damage and we've had reports from processors and growers that crop is a little bit lower, about 20-25% than last year. Last year prices were lower. So do you think this is going to kind of even out and sort of remain even keel for last year, or that's
I think for some growers, for sure. A lot of the cash market, or some of the cash market, pays based on bricks. So that's going to come into play as well. We had a fairly large crop last year. Bricks were low for some growers in terms of the amount that they received. Maybe they were at 15.5. So I think there's just too many variables to try to figure out how, as a whole, the industry is going to manage and do. But probably, we're not in a very good place to take advantage. We're not in an ideal place for sure to take advantage of these higher prices.
Still, all in all, it's a little bit better than last year.
Potentially, I think if you had really severe frost damage, the higher prices aren't going to do much for you, but hopefully, yeah.
Cool.
I don't know if you noticed that I'm in my new house and I think a couple light bulbs is blue.
I love your new house, by the way.
Welcome to the new house.
Look behind me. I don't know if you can see. Right here by my head is this very large cluster, and you see some purple on there. I took that yesterday out in the vineyards. This is a Concord cluster. Yeah,
it looks like we're just a few days away from veraison, maybe a week.
Which actually makes sense because it's normally around August 24th. So
okay, yeah. Next week.
Next week, guess what we'll be talking about?
All right. So for this week, one of the concerns I had, and it's really not all good news, but we're not seeing, and I don't have complete data. I only, this pricing gets reported to ag and markets and to growers who sell. And so there might be differences as you get to some of the smaller wineries, but I'm not seeing a huge decline in prices of hybrids. There's definitely a supply side problem and a demand side problem in the wine industry. COVID-19 hit some wineries pretty hard, not all of them. And they already had a surplus. So we saw demand decline to some wineries because of COVID-19. Supply was already a problem. Prices seem to be relatively flat, with the exception of a couple varieties.
Were those varieties lower or higher?
Yeah, so anything that's not flat is pretty much lower. But I think we're seeing that supply surplus come through in terms of cancellations or reduced tonnage contracts. We're not seeing it in price. So I don't know if that's good news or bad news. It probably depends on who you are and how much your tonnage contract was reduced. We're actually seeing, it's pretty random. The tradition, we're seeing Elvira move in both directions. I have no idea why.
Up and down? Up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you look at the major buyers of Niagara, one moved up, one moved down, probably, in the range of 20-25%, depending on which one you're looking at. So pretty substantial. I think it's really hard to make sense of some of the white wine market, and it probably depends a lot on how it's being used and where it's being sold.
Well, I'm doing my part.
Well, I think a lot of people, I think in the beginning of COVID, for sure, there was a lot of discussion about more drinking. And I think some of the major processors, that was helpful. A lot of the smaller wineries don't distribute that way. So, tourism is obviously down, and I think people aren't doing their part in terms of traveling the countryside and visiting 20 wineries in a day. I don't know if we want them to do that, but
Not 20 in a day, but
that's been the shift. You know, there's been a big shift in sparkling. Sparkling is something that consumers really decided that they desire, but also kind of make no sense during COVID. So as that market has grown and grown for the last 5 years, and right now nobody's celebrating anything. So, but yeah, it's just kind of industry pains from a shifting market. It's not necessarily that people stop drinking. And it probably will happen again when COVID is over, because whatever they're drinking now, that may change almost immediately as people get back to normal. So
beef up their online marketing.
yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for an industry that moves much more slowly than day to day. We grow a perennial crop, we harvest it once a year. It's just not physically possible to be as nimble as the consumer probably wants us to be.
I have actually heard from some of our wineries in Niagara County that they're kind of benefiting, seeing a little bit of an uptick because people can't cross the border. So they're going local, which, yay, thank you.
Right, right. Yeah, and we're definitely seeing some wineries actually increase sales. They're not necessarily doing it through their traditional channels. A lot of these wineries have the same tourists come back every year, you know, from Chicago or from Pittsburgh or Ohio. And that's a lot different. It's so, and some of those wineries are just selling different products, especially the larger wineries. So that's where the challenge is in trying to determine where prices are going.
But all in all, it's looking up and up with a little bit of flexibility with the hybrid.
Yeah, I think even on the wine side, if you have a market, you're in pretty good shape. Most of those price declines were not as substantial as I thought they would be.
Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Hey, you're the one that brought up frost, so
I know, I'm sorry.
all my news was good news this week.
Hopefully they have crop insurance though, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us this week. If you have any questions, please let us know. We'll be back next week, probably with Jennifer talking about Verasion, I hope.
Yeah.
And other than that, contact us your normal way or in the comments down below, and we'd be happy to help you with any issues you've got. Thanks a lot.
Enjoy your day.